Hi, Lance. Thank you so much for joining me today
Thanks for
and
having me.
chatting with me. So, firstly, you had a great keynote today at BSides NYC, so thank you so much for that. And in your keynote, you spoke about disruptive thinking. Can you quickly give us a brief summary of what it is that you're trying to convey to the cybersecurity community with your disruptive thinking ideology?
Sure, and thanks for having me. It's exciting to be back to see besides NYC come back on the game. Um, so let's start with the observations that I've had being in the industry for a while,
Okay.
right? And I never liked the feeling of being bored by something when I know that we all were originally super excited about something. And I've been, I personally have been in this community for at least 25 years. I wouldn't say industry, but the community for sure. And what brings me to conferences is the excitement to get together with others and share things that they've learned for the year, see your old friends, but also like new people, and we can talk about these like hacks or these cool things, whether
Yeah.
it's defensive or operative. But we're all trying to solve these problems and share this information. And to me, life is about I/O, right? It's literally we like to learn, we like to share, we like to learn, we like to share, right?
I totally resonate with that.
Right,
Yes.
and that's when we're happiest. We're in the
Yes.
psychology of flow. We lose a sense of time. That is truly psychologically when people are happy most, right? So, and we're following our light. We're following this need to solve these problems. We're all kind of scientists, right? We may not do it in the academic science way, but we're all a bunch of scientists just trying to like take it to the next level, figure something out, and it's great. So, anyways, the point being is that like when I've seen how our industry has become, and we all have to have jobs. So I'm not like saying industry, you failed us, right? It's just the nature of the beast, and I think accepting the nature of the beast is one piece, but then saying, what can I do that would change it at least a few times a year where we change something? Because like if you plant a seed, and that's the idea, is I just wanted to plant a
Correct.
seed of a methodology of getting back to our hacker roots inside the work and disrupting and innovating instead of being a person that's defending the networks and going, we've got 5 major things to worry about this year. Well, you could worry about them or you could solve one of them.
I completely agree. Sometimes I also notice that we tend to put adversaries on a pedestal, but you're
We do,
right.
yeah.
It's good to at least think about what we can control and try to solve at least one of those problems.
Correct,
And
yeah.
that's a great point you bring about.
Yeah, yeah, and it's an emotional issue, right? We're been a little bit like operant conditioned to do a certain expectation in work and things like this. But I go back and I know Steve Jobs is not perfect as a human being, but he had like that whole ad he did in like the misfits and the this and that and all this stuff. I mean, it just goes back to like what happened to that. Like the ones that were crazy enough do change the world. That thing. There is a crazy focus that we have. This like we all have ADHD or something similar. We all have a hyper focus. There's these commonalities that I think the hacker community has. This drive, this like thirst for knowledge, right? And then thirst for creativity and curiosity, and then persistence to never let it go until you figure out that problem. And then we might have a phase and go, okay, I solved that problem. Let's go on that. That's how we get our dopamine, and it's
I
so
hear it.
important, you know. So
Yeah, I hear it loud and clear from you that you really like to have that. Those kinds of innovations where you're creating a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
There are incremental innovations, and then there are like innovations that kind of shift, and you believe that the disruptive mindset can definitely help towards that paradigm innovation.
Yeah,
shift.
but like, yeah, I'll give it a good example. So I'm a definite true blue hacker. And what I mean by that is like, I'll get into a mode or a phase and I'm like, oh, let me hack this for during COVID because I want to learn AI, right, or something. And I'll start messing with models and just tinkering for like 8 months.
Yep.
Then after I've done it, I'm bored. But what I'll do is write something on it, share it with other people, and go farther with this. Like, I've always been a phase person where I'm like, okay, Zeus malware, like da da da. Okay, let me tinker with that and learn everything about this new type of thing. And
Okay.
then that opens the door for everybody else to go, there's more malware like this, and here's some techniques they use to analyze this. And it's really that I learned this stuff, and now like let me tell you what I learned. And then that like influences or inspires or plants a seed or a pebble to like literally start rippling through, and then people are like, going, well, it's not that bad. It's not that. It just doesn't take this like super genius thing. It just takes some time and work and a little bit of hyper focus and you catching something that you care about, right?
Got it.
There's this like myth in the hacker community. You got to be some whiz kid, and that's not really true. It's a field. And if you're persistent and you want to do mastery, you just need to put a lot of time into the field. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
That's an interesting point. So I think you truly represent the research phase, and then you also talked a bit about planting the idea or doing the inception, if you may call it, and letting others run wild with the idea. What would you like to see people do with some of the ideas that security researchers put out? What do you think would be some good intermediate effort and the last mile effort to materialize some of this research?
Well, so we almost have like, I don't want to sound conspiracy stuff, but when big business gets involved, it's not I don't think it's of malintent, but there are people like money, because money keeps research going. But sometimes also solving the problem stops the research money coming in.
Okay.
Right. And that's a subconscious thing. That's not like some conspiracy. That's just more like, it is sometimes better to like keep having like a research funded, right, incentive-wise, than solving a problem. And there are many problems that could have been solved a long time ago in our industry. For instance, passwordlessness, PKI, or public key encryption, or things like this have been around since the 70s. Right. Yet we still are wrestling with that and trying to get everybody to adopt FIDO2 and go to no passwords and all this stuff, and we're finally getting there.
Yeah, we're definitely making a lot of progress in
but
that
look
area.
at the academics. They're always 20 years ahead. Right? You want to look at where, like, let's start with, like, where do you find innovation ideas? Like, if you go to academia, in the 90s, you will see Bitcoin talked about before it was Bitcoin by David Chaum and a few other people, like Hashcash and all these different systems. But it wasn't scalable yet.
Correct.
But these great theories were already there.
Yes.
And then, like, 20 years later, we tend to get scale, and we Moore's law, and we finally get like to this place we can do it. So the secret to, like, if you get bored and go, what do I want to innovate? You might want to start looking at some of these academic papers, right? And then essentially, I think, to answer your question of like what we can change now, right? So today I did a methodology, a tabletop methodology, on like here's like one example of disruptive thinking. I looked at and did the how and why, and I looked at every step and says, is there something in each step that I could exploit into like for this? And the cool thing is, like, in security, you're really good at seeing patterns of vulnerabilities or patterns of intuition that say, would the software do this if I worked it this way? That's the entire kind of magic of hacker intuition, right? And so you have like this structural patterns thing with this like intuitive, like, if I were them, it's like almost like empathy. You're sitting in that shoe and going, well, what would this work? And ransomware vaccine or something like that. If AI can like suggest that, right, or this or that, we can start thinking about that too, because it means there's something going on there, right? But I want to see for the middle path us take one of these 4 to 5 or 10 freaking top 10s that we've had exactly the same for the exactly the same for the last 10 years, and solve one. And that's really what I want us to do. Is like, why do we stay so stagnant in our belief that it has to be devices that solve this, versus my security team could do a hackathon for a couple weeks, and if you let them have that time, it's money better spent in the company as an investment, because they actually will be like accessing more of their creative side of their brain. And I think that's going to, one, give them more joy. It'll create retention in that sense, but two, you might actually solve a problem.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, like, definitely look into some research and think about how to scale, like start thinking about that early, and also invest more in your research team so that they can be more creative and give them more time and space to do that. I think those are great tips. The other thing that I wanted to ask you today was, there are so many security conferences out there. What brought you to BSidesNYC specifically?
There's two things. I was notified by Huxley about it, because he was like, do you want to speak and stuff? So obviously it got to my attention because I got the early notice that it was coming back.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of B-Sides. I think that's where the real discussions are.
Okay.
New York City is kind of historically where hackers, kind of like 9X and all the freaks and all the Manuel Goldsteins and the 2600s and all that stuff came out of New York, right? B-Sides, to me, like, I've done the Minnesota one, I've done I think a Vegas one, I've done different spots, Atlanta. New York City, I mean, one of the biggest cities in America in the sense of how many people here. When I've been dying to meet some of the I mean, I've been stuck at COVID in the house for 4 years. Like, this is like, oh my gosh, I can finally hang out with, like, and meet like a lot of great people in New York that have the same interests. And I am also trying to make a New Year's resolution, not being a hermit and get back out again. Because like your COVID brain kind of got used to it, acclimating, staying inside. Secondly, this is kind of where it all starts, right? These kind of conferences, this volunteers like work where, like it's at John Jay. It's great for students, and as you know, I like the IO. So there's a teaching element to like getting that, and like we talk about all these cybersecurity economy problems. Oh, it's hard to hire good people. I'm like, you have to open doors. Like one of the biggest problems, boot camps. You pay all for money, and then they can't get a career, and they got a whole like year of going like, well, we need you to have a year of experience. Well, it's catch-22, blah 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 blah. Conferences like this, we can change that because there might be here that can go. Actually, let me open that door for you.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm doing that to a few people here, and I'm like, let me open the door for you. There's no, and that's the thing is like, once you get to meet these people, it's better than an interview. It's better than a process, and you get to do, you know, sharing of information. You get to, you know, go back and forth and talk about some cool stuff. And to me, like, the tour cons, the B-sides, the real deal, like, volunteer, like, metro, like, area type, like, specific cons to their area are where it's really the best because you are back to your natural state, so.
Amazing. So looks like you're going to be doing more inception and planting more of those seeds to
And
a
learning
lot
from
of
them as well.
Yep,
Yeah.
to a lot of the younger folks. So thank you so much for that. And now on to the fun segment of this. Before we started this conversation, I had asked you to prompt ChatGPT on one of your favorite questions. And your prompt was, if you were an inventor in cybersecurity, how would you put an end to the ransomware problem? Do you want to look at ChatGPT's response and tell us what you think of it?
Well, of course, it says as an AI language model because they've changed their moderation to.
Yes.
Annoys me. I don't have personal opinions or emotions. Okay, skipping that part. And then it explains ransomware. It's a type of malicious software because it's trying to be like all that. One way to prevent attacks is to ensure that all software and systems are up to date to the latest security patches and updates. Okay. That's nice and idealistic. That it's like the shoulda, coulda we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah, and this is something that is actually fairly common and available in most literature around. So I think it's spouting that. Yeah.
I think it's just taking from what already is out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure a large language model is that great at invention.
Correct. The creative aspects are perhaps
the
not
creative
either.
stuff.
Yes.
So like this is gonna like if I want to report on like telling a customer the standard ways of preventing it. Detection methods like intrusion detection, threat hunting can obviously do that. Still reactive in some aspects, but still I get it. I do agree with it though. Threat hunting is good. Response strategies include technical and non-technical components. This is response plans, true. Legal action against perpetrators, very true, and I'm a big supporter of that. And communication with affected stakeholders. As an inventor in cybersecurity, I would focus on developing new technology and techniques to improve prevention, detection, and response.
That sounds very generic.
It's very generic.
Yeah.
It says ultimately putting an end to the ransomware problem will require coordinated effort from governments, businesses, individuals, and proprietors. That's true, because I do think there's vendors. Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I do think there's vendors out there that probably have solved this problem.
Okay.
But it's customer acquisition costs. They got to go into the diluted market and try to sell something. It might be some small company that says this and that. And the problem with it is that everybody has to agree that this solved the problem, and they all have to adapt this and get on board to solve the problem. Otherwise, they're just like, I use this solution. What do you use this solution? I use this solution. You use this solution. And I'm like, well, that's probably what we need, a homogenous, like one thing. And the problem is we're in a competitive society and a capitalist like industry.
Yes.
And so everybody's fighting to like get that, I did it. I solved it. Well, maybe all of you did actually. But maybe you all should just become one research environment and say, here's the answer.
And make it better, perhaps.
And make it better, yeah. So we have to get a little bit more to collect. In my opinion, this is generic, but it's not wrong. But we need to get more collective and truly, like that last part is harder to do for a lot of people.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Great. Thanks for that overview of what you thought of the answer. And thank you so much for being here and chatting with me. So for anybody who's watching this video, you know who's going to open the doors for you. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
I'm making that pitch on behalf of you. But thank you so much. It was really nice talking to you.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.